Hello, it's day one of Eurocine Expo 2025. I'm joined by Katja Schmid. Thank you for coming to talk to us. Now, you're doing a presentation here, which is 25 years of colour grading. And you're actually an educator, aren't you, as well? So I'd like to, we'll talk about the what you're doing here in a minute, but I'm always fascinated to find out how people got into the role they're in. So have you been doing this all your life, or did you, find a path where you're interested in the creative industries and found yourself here by accident almost?
I'm an educator since quite a long time.
Right.
It's 21 years now.
Okay, yeah. So you know what you're doing then.
But I started really early on when I was 18 years old.
Oh, right.
Like right after high school, I started as a volunteer and in an internship actually for animation film and camera work. And from there on, I studied cinematography and I edited my movies myself too. And I was supposed to come back to the animation, but I didn't.
Right.
And so finally I got into post-production from the background of cinematography into editing, into graphics and visual effects.
Yeah.
And when I came to Stuttgart, to the Stuttgart Media University, I built up the visual effects department there.
Right. You make that sound very easy, but I mean, jumping from role to role can be quite a challenge. Did you relish that, or was it? Did you just fall in? You kind of just fallen into these roles. You must have had something fascinated you about those that you wanted to get into that, whatever.
In a way, it felt quite smooth and logic,
Right,
the way
yeah.
it developed. Like from I got certain chances which I took, and then when I started editing, just the Avid came out, and it was it was like non-linear editing. Wow, that's a big thing, and it was so fascinating. So I started learning Avid. And then I moved on to compositing, and I learned Flame and the discrete logic softwares at the time. And it was always the fascination about dealing with images, dealing with visual storytelling. So it's not that different. I mean, you could be a cinematographer or an editor, but still you deal with images. And I really liked all of that work. And in visual effects, it actually all comes together.
Yeah.
The timing, the cinematography, lighting, integration, this is all, and it's quite beneficial to know from all the different departments and to have this background.
So what you're talking about there's you've moved through a lot of different departments, but there's that thread of being fascinated by the technical aspects of a lot of things, by getting on Avid at an early stage. Anyone that early adopts something like that, and you said, wow, this is kind of thing is fascinating. Has that been the thread through everything for you? That how the technical side of it enhances the creative side?
I wouldn't say that the technical developments were the reasons why I moved from department to department. It was rather, I don't know, it just happens.
Fair enough.
You realize later on that you're now in a different, but
it felt natural at the time.
Yeah, definitely. But of course, I mean, technology are our tools, and they enable us to create what we are creating.
Yeah.
So, and it is so inspiring to learn new technologies and to also find new expressions, visual expressions of what you want to say or show, or I mean, is it technology? I don't. I'm coming from an engineering department.
Right. Yeah.
So we educate what we say creative engineers. So we do not try to actually distinguish between the two.
Oh, good. Yeah.
We rather try to build bridges between the two.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So what is the reason why we, the technology enhances creativity, and through creativity we develop new tools, and we use them later on. So this is all so interconnected.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does, because that fundamentally, you never stop learning, you never stop developing, and that is motivation enough to want to keep doing it, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which
and imagine, I mean, I started when I was on my internship in the animation film studios.
right.
I started like with frame by frame 35 millimeter
Yep.
cameras for puppet animation, and with multiplane animated tables, and with documentary is 35 millimeter cameras, ARRI cameras. And then I moved on to editing, and I was also shooting on on broadcast cameras
Right,
in
yeah.
between, and then editing on Avid before I was editing on film. So I went through all that, and this all was fascinating. I mean, all the different technologies have their specific requirements and their specific chances and offers what you can do with it. And it's not different today, but we have, I mean, the development is so crazy.
Yeah.
And it is actually quite hard to really stay on track. What's happening with AI, for instance, what's
Yeah.
happening at the moment. I mean, every minute there are other tools on the market.
Yeah.
And that is challenging, and it really changes the creative process.
Yes.
I wondered, because this is what we are not talking so much about. How does it change really the creative process? When do we use AI to serve us? And when does it feed us back with new ideas?
Yeah.
It never would have come into our
Yeah.
minds without that stuff.
And it does strike me that through, anyone that's been in any creative industry, whether it's design, film, music or whatever, there's a thread to the development. The tools have got better. If you learn how to shoot film, shoot movies on 16mm, well, there's a logical route to shooting on digital. If you learn to use an airbrush, there's a logical route to using Photoshop kind of thing. It's you using the same color technology, all those things, but your tools have changed. AI is a bit of a disruptor, isn't it? It's, well, actually, do we know, is it a disruptor? Is it a tool? We're still, that's a dialogue that's going on, that actually no one's standing up and saying, is it good? Well, we are all asking probably, is it good, is it bad? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it is really hard to have any estimate of what's going to happen. But I think it is like the next turn from what we have experienced with the turn of analog to digital.
Yeah.
Now it's digital to AI.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We are so much at the beginning of that.
Yeah. It's weird because it's one of these things that we all talk about. It's something that's coming along, but everyone's a little bit concerned about it. Whereas if it was a new film with digital sensor or something like that, it would be, we've got this to look forward to, kind of thing. But actually, so your talk with 25 years of color grading, a lot has changed in 25 years, hasn't it? Of how we can do it and what we want from it. Is that part of what the angle you're taking on it?
Well, we will show the first part of a series of interviews we have done with colorists and DPs during Camera Marche last year in Poland. And this first part deals with how the aesthetics have changed throughout this 25 years. And the interesting thing is that we all notice that there has been a tremendous change, but it hasn't been addressed really. And what especially the colorists have focused on is the emulation of analog film look nowadays with digital tools. This is quite interesting. We have everything at our disposal, but we go back aesthetically to the good old film times. Not always, but
that's always our frame of
big
reference.
diversity. But there is a tendency to that. So that's an interesting fact. And what else? I forgot what
how it's 25 years in a lot of ways isn't that long, is it? Yeah. It's changed hugely. And is there that whole thing, well, we can fix it in post-production kind of thing, and did that really come out because of color grading? Because actually we know we can decide how we want the look of the whole film to be later on.
Yeah.
And but that became a overarching thing. Yeah, we can adjust that later on. Whereas now I think color grading is much more subtle and in informed choices and talked about from the beginning of production rather than at the end of it.
Yeah, definitely. That will be also addressed in this interview series. I lost my idea. Sorry.
All right. So do you think it, where does it sit in the creative process now? Is it talked about early on, or is it?
Yeah, I think this fixing in post, this was like a very early stage. And now we kind of experience a reverse tendency to really have more control on set again. And I think it wasn't only due to digital color grading, but also to visual effects and to the fact that we can scan negatives and can either print them out or make DCPs, digital copies of this. So, there is like very often when new technology, very often when new technological advancements are launched, they are kind of overused at the very first time, and then there comes the self-regulation, and it finds its way where it's appropriate how it's used. But I'm not saying it's not appropriate, but it's like the way of how things obviously develop.
And I think I think it's one of the most interesting things, as a creative development through the industry over the past quarter century. We're all talking about digital cameras and everything, but actually color grading is one of those things that's kind of matured as a technique. So it's not, like you say, it's not a tool to fix it. It's a tool to actually express what the story is about or whatever. It's a creative choice rather than a technical choice now a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, I think the role of digital color grading in public has been underestimated.
Yeah.
Or there's not so much public focus on that. Right. The interesting thing is that for an untrained eye, it is hard to separate. Yeah. And even today, you really must have like good behind-the-scenes footage to understand what has been done. Probably in post, normally we are not getting the raw material to see or to compare. And it is like a layer on top of everything, or like the fine-tuning of the look that has been established throughout the entire creative process. So it is very hard to grab it and to really address this is an effect of digital color grading, which is, you cannot separate it from all the other craftsmanships and all the other contributions to the image that happened before. But, and here comes the big but, in terms of like, in educational terms, for instance, for us, it meant like we have a film lab now in our university, a digital one. And who is going to teach this? And so where's this expertise, and how can we actually get the expertise from the people from the film lab into the digital color grading suite, and how can we learn how to use those tools? And we still go on with all these processes. And we have the entire production now in the university, which wasn't the case 20 years ago. Yeah. So normally it was a service. You hand out your negative and you get your print back. Yeah. And this is now, and that's very interesting because it is now part of the students' creative process as well, right? So it's quite challenging to, I'm teaching color design, and I when I started with this lecture, I thought, so what would be the most important things to teach? Yeah. And I wondered, how can we teach, or what is a color look? And then I started to kind of like develop a taxonomy, because it starts with the pre-production, with the first visualization. Actually, it starts with the script.
Right.
And then it goes on and on through cinematography, the lenses, the camera, the lighting, the set decoration, the set design, and then later on everything that happens in the lab until the screening. I mean, we have different screening devices and different distribution ways and so on. So to actually really understand what the look is, you have to go through all the entire journey of the color, from pre-filmic to screen. And this is how we kind of got a grip on that.
Right, yeah. That's fantastic. Well, thank you for spending time to talk to us. I'm sure that your panel will be very enlightening. There's a pun there somewhere. But thanks for talking to us, and be good to catch up in a year or two's time and see where that whole course is going.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.